3, 2, 1, go, everybody. It's time for another CodePen Radio. Me and Stephen this week.
How is it going, Chris?
Good. This is fun. We're going to... the tentative title for this is Cheese Moving, but I'm sure the final title will be something... I don't know if we'll put cheese in it. I think we kind of have to, because it's fun. At least there was a very popular book called, I think it's called Who Moved My Cheese? Was it Steve Krug or somebody like that? That was a famous author that was like... Somewhere. Yeah, it's just one of those books that's like, sometimes when you change a product, the reaction from people can be like, why on earth would you do that? I was just using this thing and the button was here and now the button is over there, and
where's my
why
cheese
would you
now?
do that?
I need it.
Yeah. Making the analogy to, I don't know, whatever, mice in a maze that are like trying to find the cheese in the same spot every time, and then the scientist goes and picks up the cheese and puts it in a different part of the maze. Why would you do that, scientist?
Well, to extend the analogy further, there's this Mexican restaurant that's just up the street from me that a year or so ago they closed down, and they put that they were moving on the sign. And they were in a good spot. It was nice and convenient and close. Yep. But then they moved down the street, and the new location is actually way better. It's clean. It's nice. Like it's a wonderful building. And it's. I'm a little upset about the change in location based on the proximity of where I expected it to be, but actually the queso is just as good. Fine.
You had to breathe in, breathe out, and figure it out. Yeah, that's funny. It's just down the street. Yeah, I could see it. I've definitely had restaurants move like across town, and I'd be like, well, that's that. Sorry, but which is, so the point of this is a metaphor for software, and that software changes all the time, and that users have reaction to their software too. And we're kind of going through it right now because we're 2 plus 3 something weeks into the 2.0 editor. I feel like there was a time in software where it just all seemed to happen at once. We'd release something and then we'd just get a big boom of stuff. Maybe it was like heyday of Twitter. People are all seeing it. They're a little more engaged and stuff. But times have changed a little bit. And the reaction for us is that it feels like a more extended release of user feedback on like, I just got around to looking at this, and definitely some cheese moving moments. They're not all negative, though. Sometimes they are. Sometimes it's like, why on earth would you do this? Because visually there's a little bit more going on in the new editor. Something we knew was going to happen. Like there's some things that you see right away in 2.0, like a sidebar that was like moments that were internal conversations we had, like, oh, maybe we should have that closed at first and stuff like that, and be like, no, but then you're not really like understanding what the new thing, all these things are talked about to death and thought about and tested and yada yada. But that can be a thing where you see something new and you're like, why would you do that? I have the old thing that I liked, please change nothing ever. Is a real action. And then sometimes it's positive. You were telling me about a good support email came in. Somebody is a user of our bookmarks feature. And just due to space constraints, it's now in the share menu. So it's a little different location, quite a literal cheese moving. I mean, not literal and then it's not cheese, but this is where was my button? Oh, the button is in a new spot. And then when they learned where it was, they learned about a bunch of other new features that CodePen has and was all excited about it.
Right. And that's the kind of thing like we want. Like, yes, things are a little moved around, but as soon as you explore a little bit, like you see all these new capabilities, you see the organization of things that we have done. Because in the past, like add to collection was in the footer, right next to like a fork button and a delete button and like all these other random buttons that were just this junk drawer of things. But now they're cleanly organized and easily searchable in the Omnibar. And so grouping everything has been a lot more logical, even though it's different than what it was previously. So it does take a little adapting if you are used to your cheese being in one spot.
That is a funny... Like, I'm sure, do you ever have somebody in your life where you went and organized the garage and like, well, how could you do such a thing? I don't know where anything is anymore.
Yeah. Right.
I knew everything was in the mess.
All of my piles were perfect.
Mm-hmm. That's fun. So we were going for organization or whatever. I've never spent more time on anything in my life than this new editor. So believe me, if something is somewhere and behaves a certain way, that it was not, even if you don't like it or disagree, it's not that it wasn't talked about. It was talked about more than you can imagine, I'm sure.
And we went through a long period of user testing. We had, private betas, public betas, like all kinds of rounds of feedback of things, and made a lot of choices based on that.
Not to be too defensive, but yeah, I think that's what it is essentially. Like, we're trying over here, and things are will evolve based on your feedback now too. It's not like we're like shutting our eyes to this and stuff too. But there's also feedback that's a little harder to see, like running into somebody at a conference or whatever and be like, "Oh, CodePen, cool! I used to use that," or the like. or whatever. But there's always moments, and you talk to people enough, and there's like, well, yeah, you do a little thing, and then you got to go because you can't even add a file. People be like, you're like, yeah, no, you can't add a file in the old editor. Now it's just you don't have to, it doesn't matter, but you certainly can, and that to us that represents somebody who's not going to leave at that particular moment. They might leave for other reasons, but maybe we can hold on to people a little longer. Just because I don't want them to leave for such a silly reason,
Yeah. Well, the whole struggle with 2.0 has been, we want people to be able to do more with CodePen while still retaining the simplicity that CodePen is known for. The CodePen fits a really good niche of being able to post code snippets, being able to make demos to show off bugs or show off new browser features or, particular design. Like, all that is a really great use of CodePen. But there's also this whole other side of like, well, what if I want a microsite? What if I want to be able to like share the full version of something for somebody to click around with without having to be in an iframe or be in an editor? Like, there's all of these new features that we wanted to put in there, as well as making it extendable, making all these new possibilities of languages and things that you can add that just having a simple drop down is not going to be sufficient for. There's static site generators and all these kinds of things that we want to get in there. And so we want that simplicity of UI and the ability to create code snippets really fast and be able to share demos. Like, yes, absolutely. But what else can we do with it? What else can we empower users to use CodePen for?
Yeah. Cool. And it's also funny to weigh it against these. We're like, whoa, my God, the CodePen compiler is this thing we put so much time and mental energy and innovation really into, and how it understands all your code and places blocks together. We have all these blocks in the pipeline that are so exciting to come out that are like on our side much and becoming less and less work to get out, and how exciting all that is. And then like contrast with like, yeah, but now I see the doc type and I don't like that. So, I knew that was such a thing. And that's why we had such big conversations about it and ended up on the classic block and stuff. Stephen's been doing a lot of good work with people who, certainly have this like there's too much going on kind of thing, and there's like this 1-2 punch that I think we're just gonna just keep telling about for now, which is minimal UI, which is Command U, and it just stays minimal forever until you turn it off, which just hides a lot of the UI and stuff. If you really are just like, I liked the 3 boxes, the 3 boxes are just there in an editor that's faster and more accessible and has all these extra things that you can do with it. Great. That's just, it's literally a tap away from that. And then it's I just don't like looking at the doc type. Also understandable. You just click on that, the classic block, and then it just behaves in the old way where it just puts that HTML up into the thing. So that it's just an educational moment. You still might not like the new editor. It's like you're never going to get everybody. Some people can be like, I don't want anything to change ever. I think that's old man shakes fist at cloud type of stuff, and that's fine. We're trying, though. We're trying over here. Now, if you're like just more benign, just like I'm just looking for this thing that I used to do. I would try the Omnibar. That's the Command K thing. We heard a good Blue Sky post on it today that was somebody finding it for the first time, like, oh God, look at that. That's cool. You can do all this stuff. And it kind of teaches you in there too. Like, I was telling you it's Command U for minimal UI. If you can't remember that, you're like, oh, I listened on the podcast and they said it's some kind of command to turn on minimal UI. You don't actually have to remember that. You can just remember the one thing, which is the Omnibar, Command K or Command P or Command Shift P, or maybe there's even another one.
Command O for Omnibar.
There you go. O for Omnibar. So many. You can almost accidentally trip the Omnibar. And it's just this little thing that opens up, and then type minimal. The point of it is like a fuzzy search kind of thing that helps you find anything. It could be a file, it could be a block, it could be a command, it could be anything. It's going to be in there. So just remember that one.
We even have keywords added in there. So if we like renamed a feature or like moved a feature so that it's just maybe not what you would think it would be called, we have tags and keywords in there that if you're searching for a particular thing, it'll still match, even if that's not the literal term that we use for it now.
So all of our planning for this, of course, happens in the lovely app of Notion. Let me do a little spot for them because they just launched custom agents. And with that launch, Notion became the collaborative AI workspace where teams and agents work side by side. And now their developer platform is turning that workspace into infrastructure developers can build on, which is true, right? Like you can write cloud functions, like pull down their little CLI from NPM and then just be blasting up code that you expect Notion to run on your behalf. And it can absolutely just do that. So it's funny to think of Notion as like, yeah, it's this place where you just like keep all your business documents, and God, do we ever keep all of our business documents in Notion. But then you can like write code on top of that that's like, do this on a schedule, or connect this with this, or pull this data out of the API and send it over here. Whatever your heart desires, you can do that. But you can also ask an agent to do that, meaning just fire open that sidebar and say make a new agent and just type in what you want it to do. They will magically create an agent to do that work for you, and then you're not even writing code. It's kind of like best of both worlds. You can do both. You can even programmatically call that agent, that kind of thing. So that's all lowercase letters, notion.com/codepen to try Notion's developer platform today. And when you use our link, you're supporting our show. That's notion.com/codepen. Lovely.
Hold on. Is it okay?
That's
Notion.com.
correct. Don't worry.
Okay. Yeah. I got to tell you, I'm jealous of this landing page that they have for these features. Such a great design. So many cool animations. Just check it out for that. For real, it's great.
Lovely. Okay, so we're talking about cheese moving in this episode pretty much. Is there other like big things that you feel like are like, dang, we really did move that cheese, move that UI?
One of the things that seems to be a bit of a sticking point for people is pins having files now. And even though we've still got like the 3 panes showing HTML, CSS, and JS, it's now showing like a file name. And so they're actually tabs now, so you can drag them around, you can reorganize them, and it's actually a way better experience than the previous 3-pane thing with the same kind of simplicity, but just the fact that it's got a file name in the tab. People are like, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it feels more website-y. There was one, I think the top comment on the Hacker News thread at launch was kind of like, it feels like I'm making a website in a website or something. That was just the end of their comment, which I actually kind of liked. Just as kind of a funny concept. But I can see there being like a little bit of immediate gut reaction to this is less for simple things and more for complicated things.
Right.
That's like, what are you going to do? Like, I can prove it by using it for a million simple things because that's what I do. That's like my bread and butter. I'm like constantly making simple things. It certainly was not a intentional back turning against making simple things. I mean, my whole life is simple things. And I feel like there's just less magic when you look at it in this way. And I kind of like that. And it also, this was, I don't know, I guess admittedly slightly less intentional, but there is so much code produced with AI AI. Of course, we're just at the moment where everybody's produced all the code they write is AI generated. We see a lot of that copy and paste over into CodePen stuff before we get to our own AI features. And that it's more compatible with that. If CodePen is doing less fancy CodePen specific stuff that just any old agent doesn't really know about, that it becomes this more kind of copy paste friendly place, which I kind of like.
Yeah, we want it to feel magical, but we don't want it to be mysterious, like what's happening. If you're looking at the build plan, like you see clearly like how we're processing all these files, you can get way more insight into things than the classic CodePen ever offered. And so now it's a lot more understandable, and you've got config files for all the processors, and it makes a lot more sense. Config alone,
think of that. You couldn't configure anything in the old CodePen. You just get what you get, Which, and I get that's simple. So then our intention is like, well, you still don't have to care. You don't have to look at it. You don't have to change anything. It's just like, it's there if you want to do it. You know.
We set it all up to work by default, but then you can get in there and do more with it if you want.
It just seems fair, What if you want to change something? Then you can, Less people take it off because they're like, well, I literally can't even configure stuff. Even little stuff that I feel, it feels like old to me now, but because it's only been out a few weeks, it's not actually old for most people. Like the fact that we actually type check TypeScript is so like funny to me. Like, we just didn't do that. Did you want to write TypeScript forever on CodePen since we released it, I don't know, a decade ago, and you had a problem with a type? Old CodePen would just be like, It just didn't even care. It didn't even try to type check it. And the fact now that you get a nice little warning or error or whatever is necessary for the situation and all that is just like, what a breath of fresh air. Technology that works. Isn't that nice? And like you're saying, you see the build process, but you also see the build output. I really like that too. It's like, okay, you took my code and you like did stuff with it. Can I see it? Yeah, you can see it. Just open up the build output and take a look. Again, you don't have to care. You don't have to ever open that in your life if you don't want to. But I find that satisfying as a developer. Like, show me what you did, please. I need to look at it. Well,
and since everything is tabbed now, you can just open that file in another tab and compare the input and output as you're actively changing it. Like, it's really cool to just keep that open and watch what's being processed.
Yeah. We had that. See, that's a cheese moving moment because if you had a SAS file in the old CodePen editor, there was a thing in the context menu, or I guess it wasn't really a context menu because that implies right clicking, but there was a little arrow drop down menu and you could open that up and it would say like show processed or something like that. And it would swap out the contents of that editor with the processed of it. So you could see on a one-off basis what the result was, which I feel like the main use case was like, did I write this SAS loop correctly? Is it like blasting out all the looped stuff or not? Because it was kind of the only place to see that without weirdly digging into dev tools and stuff. But now you can put them side by side if you want to. You look at your authored SAS and your output CSS. You can do that. I mean, you can have the SVG file that you're authoring be open in the preview and be looking at it that way as you're working on it. Pretty neat. More possibilities and a little cheese moving happening there. Okay. So settings are different then. I think that's like some legit cheese moving was like, I'm used to going into my settings to change which CSS processor I'm using or something. That's why when you open those settings, we have that little it almost looks like an ad kind of in the corner that's like blocks. Blocks are the thing that change what processors you're using and stuff and make those available. You don't have to open a setting to change to use SAS if you don't want to. You just name the file .scss and that's that. That's cheese movie though, like the stuff that was in settings. It's kind of like there's less settings now because a lot of the settings just happen as part of the pen. And then, but visually it might look like there's more settings, but it's because we put some stuff in there that normally you had to leave to be able to go do. Like you're so like, silly. It is kind of silly, like I want to change like the theme like what font and colors the editor's using. Like, wow, why would you be able to do that from the editor itself? No, go out to this Rails page where you had to change that stuff. Isn't that just silly? Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's different. The place where you do it, the cheese has moved where you do it, but you can just, now you just do it right while you're in the editor. It just immediately happens. It just seems like so obviously better to me.
Yeah.
But it moved. I'm sorry, it moved. You're gonna have to get used to it. It's only week 2.
And privacy is another big one. That used to be just kind of hidden away in settings, but now it's this whole sidebar panel kind of experience, because there's way more you can do with privacy now, because it's more than just making it obfuscated with a fancy URL. You can now password protect. You can now make it collaborators only, which means you can invite people directly to the pin and give them access to the pin in a way that you couldn't ever before. And that feeds into the collab mode, and they can, actively get in there and make changes with you or while you're offline. Like it's a whole new ball game for access control.
Totally. Not just public and private anymore. We got those more options there, which is, from you, the people. They wanted it. I think it's cool. Password protecting something just feels kind of satisfying,
Yeah.
Plus, you can make a funny password. Don't miss that opportunity. It's like getting to pick your home network Wi-Fi name. It's like that's once every couple of years do you get that joy.
Custom license plate.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah, not everybody can have FBI surveillance van. That's only you that can name your. External resources changed to a little less feedback on that, some, but not a lot. I did think like that used to be a thing where if you wanted to, again, this is weird CodePen magic. If you wanted to like add jQuery, sorry to use such an old school one. What's like a new school thing that people would add as a JavaScript library? I don't even know.
React.
It feels like. Yeah, and certainly that was one that people used in that way. I want to just type in the name of something like an NPM thing or a library that I'm used to that I just know is generally available, and then we like helped you search for it and get a URL, like a CDN hosted URL for it, and then it just sat there as a URL in this like UI that was basically just an array of URLs that you could drag and drop to rearrange and stuff. That's just weird magic, and it was there because you didn't have the head of the document. You didn't have control over that. So
ultimately, those would become script tags in the the custom template.
They went in the body, I guess.
Yeah.
But, right. The custom template was the most like magic-y thing, and I get it. It was around for 14 years. So like some people got used to this like the magical template-y thing, and the magical template-y thing still exists. You can just turn on the classic block and you can have it. But I think there's plenty of developers that are like, when I make a link or a script out to a third-party thing, I want to use a link or a script. Like if I go to Google Fonts and it says copy and paste this code, and they give you like 3 link tags because it does all this fancy like preloading and stuff that it wants you to do when it uses your font. Where do you put that stuff? Well, you had to know in the old CodePen editor, there's a magical place called Stuff for Head that's like a 16-year-old made this UI, which is. And anyway, that's where you had to paste it. You had to paste it into the secret location that you'd only know if you really like dug into this editor. Now you I don't know, you put it in the head. That's where you put it.
Head's right there. You can put it in yourself.
Yeah. And there is a stuff for head setting in the classic block too. So if you want to abstract that stuff, you can still do that. It's just, it's in a different location. Cheese has moved. Yeah. You don't need external resources as much anymore, though, because most stuff, like Stephen was like, React, which is true. You could link up React as a script tag. That was like I don't know. Tempting to call it a weird way to use it, because the more common way to do it is, you see in React projects, import React from React. I said that more times in my life than I care to admit while we're talking about this. But that's what you see, and then you see it like pull in use state and use ref or whatever else, and then you like destructure it or whatever from the global export of React, and then you pull in React DOM too, and that's from a slightly different place. But you see these lines of code. Our goal with the new editor, which is accomplished and available now, is most external resources are imports like that, and the expectation is that it came from npm. That's where most of it, even jQuery these days, even GreenSock, all these libraries that existed well before that, ESM was a thing, have moved over to like most of these resourcey stuff is just an import. You can just type that import as if it's on npm, and we just go and it works. It just works, and it works. So that we have a podcast about that. So, but that's cheese movie too. You have to kind of learn that. You have to know, like, don't go into settings and look for somewhere where you can type in React. It's in this case, it's almost like more magical. Like, just pretend like it is going to work, and it'll work.
Well, along those same lines, like an external resource before was Tailwind, and you had to copy all these special tags to import it from a CDN and like all this extra stuff. But now that's just a block built into the system, so that if you type import Tailwind in your CSS,
I think just starts Tailwind working. CSS.
Tailwind CSS,
that. Yeah. That's fun, and we see that sometimes from LLM output too, that wants to style stuff with Tailwind, which is fine. What it'll have in the header is a link to the CDN hosted version of Tailwind, which is, everybody knows. Well, that shouldn't say everybody knows, but it's like not how you're supposed to use Tailwind. It's just for demoing purposes. It's just for playing around. It's so wildly not performant that you should never ship a site with it. But what's kind of cool for us is, like, if you see that, you can just like double click it and delete it pretty much, and just type at import Tailwind CSS in your CSS file instead, and that will make it all work, but the real way. And that was always something I really liked about Tailwind, is the way that it works is like, there's a billion zillion classes representing anything that CSS can do or whatever, or close to it. But if you were to actually put in your CSS file every class that can do every possible thing, that CSS file would actually be counterproductive. It would be really large. And like, yes, you're still getting the benefit of these like whatever classes that are atomic and that some people prefer to look at and understand, but you're not getting the performance benefit. No, that is not how Tailwind works. It looks at your JavaScript and your HTML files and figures out how few of them it can put into the final output. And the end result was usually CSS that was quite a bit smaller than writing it any other way, which is kind of a, good job. High five Tailwind for that.
Yeah. Cool little tip about multi-file pins. They don't have to be HTML, CSS, and JS. If you like Tailwind and want to use a bunch of Tailwind, you could just have a style tag in the header that says at import Tailwind CSS, and that'll activate the Tailwind block, and it'll work just the same as if it was in a CSS file. And so you could actually delete the CSS file if you don't need it, and add a new page, make your own multi-page Tailwind site where they just have the style tag in the header that activates everything. Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, it was satisfying for me to know, because I think is the latest Tailwind out 4? I think
so.
They kind of have a page that's like, it's like not. It's against the spirit of Tailwind a little bit to need a CSS or whatever and Tailwind. Like, it's not, you don't need that, so don't do it. The docs page is probably a little more, I don't know, judicious or something, but that's essentially what it says. But that on CodePen, it just doesn't matter. Like, the way that our compiler works, it combines things and kind of doesn't care what people think should be combined or not. So it just works. It just it doesn't care if you import Tailwind and a CSS file. So if it's your big dream to use Tailwind and Sass together, boy, you just go ahead.
Come to CodePen.
Yeah,
we got it.
Packages is pretty nice that way. I should mention that projects is pretty big cheese move. We emailed everyone with projects and we put warnings up and tried to be real clear about this, but we have heard from a few people that are like, "Where's my project? Your project is a pen now." because there's nothing that a project could do that a pen cannot do. So pens are, your project is still there. If it's deployed, it's still deployed. Everything redirects to where it's supposed to go. All good. Your project is just a pen now. There's not a ton to say about that. I get that that's kind of weird, but it was nice for us to kind of consolidate. We're not trying to make more and more editors. We're trying to make less and focus on innovating and extending one editor as we go forward.
Now you get more options with your project because it's now a part of the 2.0 system.
Mm-hmm. All right. I hope we didn't sound too wildly defensive or anything in this. I definitely want to hear from you. We change and evolve. I mean, we work all day, every day on CodePen. So of course we want to hear from you, and certainly not above criticism and thoughts as to what can make CodePen better. We're happy to hear from you anyway. Social media, email, support@codepen.io, or chris@codepen.io is fine. We have support page on the site. You can, in a feedback form in the new editor, you can hit us up however you'd like. And it's just good to hear from people, whatever you think. Mm-hmm. It's useful to us. All right. Final thoughts?
Take a moment and look for where your cheese has moved. And after a little bit of acclimation, it'll probably just start to click and make sense. Every type of change requires a little adjustment. So, get in there and try it out.
Yeah. All right. See you soon, everybody.
Adios.